Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Things I've Learned from Barry Harris. Today I thought we would talk about soloing over dominance, and I thought we would use the bridge of I Got Rhythm in B flat to go over some ideas. Now there's an episode that I made, I think it's episode 5, that has half-step rules, Barry's half-step rules for dominance. And it would probably be a good thing for you to check out if you haven't already before we start working on these. This way you can understand it a little bit better. So the scales for I Got Rhythm, well, the chords are D7 for 2 measures, G7 for 2 measures, C7 for 2 measures, and then F7 for 2 measures. So when Barry has us play the scales for it, he says, okay, we're going to play the scale up and down for each one. So let's try that. We'll do it for D7, up and down. And remember, his scales only go to the 7th, so you run it to the 7th and run back down. So it'll be D7 up and down, G7 up and down, C7 up and down, F7 up and down. So let's try it. 1, 2, 3, and G7, C, F. Okay, then we're back to the beginning, or the last 8, I guess that would be. So, some concepts to try. What he will do is, Barry usually in the class will take a phrase, and then we'll try to do it on all 4 dominants. Now, whatever that phrase is, it's irrelevant for the time being, because we just want to try to see if we can do it on D7, on G7, on C7, and on F7. So now let's take just any phrase. Maybe we'll start on the 3rd of D7. Run 3rd, 2nd, down to 1. And because we started on 3rd, we're allowed to use 1 half step between tonic and 7. So, and then maybe after that, we'll pivot a chord. So that's something we haven't talked about, pivoting. And this is what Barry talks about when he discusses his concept of pivoting. So let's say we're going to do a chord up, which is 4 notes up from, let's say, the 7th of D7. It would be this. Now what pivoting means is you play the first note, and then you play the next 3 notes an octave lower. So instead of this, you have this. So you really should be able to do all of your chords like that. So in other words, that would be pivoting all your chords. So anyway, so we did, starting from the 3rd, down, put 1 half step. And then we went down to the 3rd, so we say. Now we should be able to do that on G7. So let's find the 3rd on G7 and do the same thing. We pivoted a chord and then we came down to the 3rd. Same thing for C7. And then the same thing again for F7. So let's try it. Okay, so now let's try a different phrase. Maybe we'll do, let's use some triplets. Or maybe let's continue with the idea of pivoting. We'll do 6 chromatic to 5. Then when we get to 5, we will pivot a chord. So we'll say, so let's see how that'll sound. And we'll still put 1 half step. So let's see what that sounds like. And we'll put a triplet between the 3rd and the 4th. So let's say, and then maybe the same. And then but just using one phrase and trying to do them on all four of the chords: D7, G7, C7, and F7. There's a million of these that you could do, but just try, take any particular rule that Barry uses, or we can do the important minor that's found on the 5th degree of each dominant. So in the key of D7, or on a D7 chord, it would be A minor. So let's do some things on the minor. Let's say, so, and then the same thing for, same thing here. So, trying to do these little things on all four chords is super important. Then, what you want to also get used to doing is running, just playing one of those phrases, then maybe not doing it for the next phrase. So let's try that. So that was, I just did it for D7. I didn't do it for G7. I had a few notes for G7, and then I did it for C7, and I didn't do it for F7. I had a few notes for F7. The other thing you can do is you can start to learn how to run, and I think we've talked about this before, because a dominant chord, whenever you have a dominant, it brings it in its tritone. So its tritone is 3 whole steps away. So 3 whole steps from D would be A flat or G sharp. So it brings in that scale also. And all of the things that you could do for D7, you can also do for A flat 7. But instead of just mimicking exactly what we do for D7 into A flat 7, maybe we'll just run a phrase, one thing into the next thing. So why don't we try, let's see, let me just... So let's see what I did for D7. Well, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I came down, and once I got down to the 6th of the D7, I came down a half step, and I came down a chord from the 2nd of the A flat 7. So again, if we were going to think about the scales for this now, instead of thinking this, maybe we should think of D7, A flat 7. So again, all the things you need to know for A7, or D7, I'm sorry, is thirds, triads, chords, which is 4 notes. Now you have to know the same thing for A flat 7. That was thirds, triads. You have to know chords, and so on. So I'm just picking little random spots. For that case, I came down. Let's see. That's the tritone. That's just coming down a triad from the 2nd of the A flat. And then I surrounded the 5th of the G7. So there's a million different things that you can practice on those. Running one thing to the next thing, and then using the tritone, which is super important also. Also, we can do maybe something on Barry's other chromatic scale that he did. So maybe we'll try to start on, let's say, the 5th of D7. let's try that. So let's see, 1, 2, right on the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one of his chromatic, and I think that's in one of the earlier episodes also, his chromatic scale, which is super cool also to use. So running D7 into G7, playing the same little phrase on D7 and G7, or maybe running D7 into A flat 7, or maybe just running D7 into G7 and not playing a whole lot. But what was there was one he used to do like, what was it? Oh, yes. So he would do, sometimes guitar players will play something like this. Now what that is D7, a half step up to E flat 7, back down to D7, and then D7's tritone, which is A flat 7. Then you're going to do exactly the same thing for G7, which would be G7, A flat 7, G7, D flat 7, then C7, D flat 7, C7, F sharp 7, F7, F sharp 7, F7, B7. So if you're going to do that, he might take something like, or he might do all of them. So all that was I went up a chord for the D7 from the third. Then when I got to D flat 7, I came down that same chord from the second, which is the same chord going up. So, and then I did the tritone coming down from the second. So I should probably do all of them. Let me see if I can do it. So it would be. But it would have to be really fast. Oh man. Boy. And then the last one be. But you see, just being able to practice those. And again, that's just doing them on all of them, which you probably wouldn't do. You might do a few like that. So you might do a few. And again, if we're doing it up from the third, you could also do it up from the fifth. That's nice too. So all these little things, all these little ways to practice your dominance in the bridge of I Got Rhythm. Really important. Again, I hope you're enjoying these. I'm loving them. If you have any suggestions as to what else you can practice on the bridge of I Got Rhythm or with dominance, I'd love to hear them. One thing we haven't talked about, and I think I'll make a video about it eventually, is the whole tone scale, which goes along with the dominant. Anytime you have a dominant, you can play a whole tone scale, which is basically a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a 6-note scale that consists of only whole steps. So it's an interesting scale, and it's very useful. Let me just see if I could throw this. So you you could throw it in. Nice scale. But I could have we could have an entire several episodes about it, actually, all ways to practice it and so on. But anyway, I think for what we discussed today, it's quite a lot to practice. So I hope you've enjoyed the rest of these videos, and keep the comments coming, and make sure you share with your musician friends, and let's spread the word of Barry Harris. It's really important. So anyway, have fun in practicing your dominant scales. Thanks again.